Hello everyone, it is Constitution Day, September 17th. So, I'm going to be talking about the Constitution briefly. And if you watched the video on the Declaration of Independence, you would have already seen and had an explanation of this founding timeline. Here it is again, but I'm not going to go into it. Go check out that other video if you want a little bit more information. So, these are the sections of the Constitution. We have the preamble, Article 1 about the legislative branch, Article 2 about the executive branch, 3 judicial branch, 4 talks about different things, states, 5 amendments, 6 just kind of some other general topics, 7 is ratification of the Constitution, and then afterwards you have the Bill of Rights, which are the first 10 amendments, most of the ones that people are familiar with. Then are the rest of the amendments. So the preamble. I'll read this, but for most of the sections I'm not going to be reading too much into it. But I'm going to read this and then explain what it's basically saying. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. If you're not familiar with domestic tranquility, that basically means peace at home. I think the rest of it is pretty clear. In general, what this is saying is that we, the people of the United States, do create this Constitution in order to make a better country. That simple. So, some principles, just real quick. A couple quotes. The Constitution is focused on limiting the acquisition of power, of too much power, into one person or one group. And so these quotes basically have to do with that. In questions of power, let no more be heard of confidence in man, but bind him down for mischief by the chains of the Constitution. So we need to have a little level of skepticism in who our leaders are, and be sure that we are following the Constitution so that we are not led away. And then this next quote by James Madison, the first one by Thomas Jefferson. This next one, it may be a reflection on human nature that such devices should be necessary to control the abuses of government. But what is government itself but the greatest of all reflections on human nature? Okay, so here we go. Article 1. The Constitution starts off by saying, I'm going to read just the first line of this section. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. So for the representatives, they're going to be, you have every 2 years. That's when they will all be up for re-election, and each state will get a different amount of representatives based on their population. In general, the House of Representatives is going to deal with the finances, power of the purse, and they are the beginning. They run the impeachment process, which require, I think, just one, the majority of one vote to impeach the president. But then it will go to the Senate, where there's the impeachment trial, and you need, I believe, 2/3 in order to convict. Each state gets 2 senators. Senators, one of the important things they do is approve judges and some other officials in the executive branch. Some of the things that Congress shall have power to do are listed here: collect taxes, establish post offices, declare war, And then at the bottom, make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution. It's an important clause there. Now, earlier this year, it's 2024, I was reading and I noticed this is probably for me, like the most interesting section of the Constitution, at least right now. Because basically, if this was followed, it pretty much would have prevented the Civil War. The problem is that it never says that you cannot secede. Court cases after the Civil War determined that it's unconstitutional to secede. But here it does make it clear that you are not to form a confederation, which the southern states did. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation. That's in the first part, but then in the third part it repeats it. Basically repeats it that no state shall enter into any agreement or compact with another state or with a foreign power, or engage in war unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. But the key here is it says without the consent of Congress. So it says it twice, essentially, but the second time it says you need consent of Congress. Anyways, that I feel like is a section that not a lot of people know about. Article 2. This is where the president and vice president are. It's the executive branch. So the president is in charge of the military and sees that laws are enforced. And the president and the vice president are elected to 4-year terms. And more recently, the limit has been set to maximum of 2 terms. An amendment changed that. And in a future video, I will discuss the Electoral College, but this is where it has that. There's a lot to talk about there. Article 3, Judicial Branch. So with the Supreme Court, they interpret laws, and also talks a little bit about some of the lower courts. So the president appoints the justices. As I said previously, you need Senate approval, and Supreme Court justices are technically allowed to serve for life if they desire, but in the Constitution it says they hold offices during good behavior. So Article 4 says if someone leaves a state where they committed a crime, they must be brought back to that state. Talks about formation of new states, and each state has a republican form of government, and the federal government is to protect states. Now, states do have some of their own powers. The governors do have power over, I believe the National Guard, but here it talks about how the federal government in general is supposed to take care of that. So Articles 5 through 7, combine them because they're pretty small. 5, it talks about the process of creating new amendments. So there are 2 ways. First is 2/3 of each house of the legislative branch vote and decide on an amendment. The other way is for 2/3 of state legislatures to call a constitutional convention. And then in either case, you need 3/4 of the state legislatures for amendments to be ratified to become official. Article 6, Supreme Law of the Land. Pretty simple, just in general, the Constitution is the binding law. States, citizens are bound to the Constitution. Talks about the oath to support the Constitution here, but also mentioning that no religious test is required. 7, originally ratification of states. There were 9 out of 13 that were required for it to become law, to become official. And then just real quick, the amendments. First 10 amendments, Bill of Rights, and there are 27 total. Basically it. As I had mentioned previously, we will discuss the Electoral College in a future video, as well as kind of talking about Republican or a republic versus a democracy. And then a separate video we'll talk about the whole Christian nation debate. What is a Christian nation? How do you define it? And is the United States a Christian nation? Okay, well, thanks for watching.